In the land of urban legends and the shadows of the ghostly realm, the Headless Horseman still holds his place in the spectral pantheon, as he has for centuries. But in the 20th century, he was joined by his more modern, mechanised counterpart, the Headless Motorcyclist. Urban legends explain how the motorcyclists became detached from their heads in a few different ways, sometimes accidental, other times malicious. The oldest iteration of the story seems to be from Australia in the mid-1950s. The Australian version of the story is that a motorcyclist was riding behind a truck carrying building supplies one windy day. On the flatbed of the truck, sheets of galvanised iron were tied down, but the ropes holding them were fraying as the wind shook the load and the sharp edges of the iron rubbed against them. The motorcyclist decided to pull out and drive around the truck, just as the ropes gave, and the top sheet of iron was lifted off and into the air. As luck would have it, the metal sheet flew straight into the motorcyclist before he had a chance to react, the sharp edge acting like a guillotine blade, slicing the hapless rider's head clean off. The momentum kept the corpse upright in the seat and on the path he had been on as the machine sped past the truck's cabin. At that moment, the truck driver had a heart attack and himself ran off the road. Later in hospital, he gasped out what he had seen that had affected him so. The driver had glanced aside and seen a headless motorcyclist spraying rich red blood from the raw neck racing past him. In the 1970s, a motorcyclist was said to have been riding behind a panel van with its tailgate down on one of the windy roads in the hillside Adelaide suburb of Skye. The motorcyclist collided with the panel van and was somehow decapitated. The rider's head and helmet rolled over an embankment into bushland, and despite earnest searches, they were never recovered. It has been claimed by some that on foggy winter nights that they have seen the headless motorcyclist riding down the hill, perhaps still seeking his lost head to reunite with his ghostly body. Another version of the tale is that some dirt bikers had found an isolated area with good ground for riding and doing jumps and other stunts. That land, though, was private property, and the man who owned it was not keen on strangers roaring around the bush. Although he forbid riders to go on the land and even posted signs warning that trespassers would be prosecuted, it was out of the way and easy for the riders to sneak in and have their fun undetected, at least for a while. In the end, the man, frustrated and irate, decided he would string some rope across the paths used by the riders to catch them and knock them off their bikes. Then he had a better idea. They'd see the ropes and duck under them. He'd use fishing line tied to trees either side of the path. It would be impossible to see and avoid. So he set his trap, and sure enough, a rider came along at high speed. The line caught the rider under the helmet, and his momentum kept him going until the line cut through his neck and beheaded him. This last version is said to have gained popularity due to a scene with piano wire used to decapitate a rider being included in an Australian biker movie called Stone, made in 1974. The film was not shown in Japan until 1981, and since then legends of headless motorcyclists, known as Kubinashi Rider, have become well known. Another headless motorcyclist is said to haunt a bridge in Elmore, Ohio. This rider was a young man who had returned from serving in World War I. He had not heard from his fiancée in some months, so he decided to ride out to the farm where she lived and surprise her. He was full of anticipation and excitement on a beautiful spring day. He stopped short of the farmhouse and walked the rest of the way to maybe catch a glimpse of her prior to their reunion. As he reached the house, he could see her through an open window, and a smile danced on his lips. However, as he watched, another man approached, and the couple kissed. He could see a wedding band on her hand as he touched the other man's face. Tears welling in his eyes, he turned and ran back to his bike and raced away, only thinking of being as far away from where he was as quickly as possible. In his distraction and hurry, he skidded on a bridge and crashed, the force of the collision decapitating him. It is rumoured that the rider returns to haunt this stretch of road every March 21st since. like the rider at Skye, in search of his missing head. Bardsley Road, Tulare, and Creek Road in Ojai, California, are said to be haunted by riders with the same lack of a cranium. The Bardsley Road ghost is said to be that of a teenager who died in the 1950s, when his friends strung a rope across the road as a prank that went wrong. Although some locals say that it is not Bardsley Road but Marinette Avenue, Exeter, to the north, which is haunted, and by a motorcyclist who struck a train and died. Still others say the rider who died was in an accident at Tulare, but in the 1960s. In Canada, the ghostly rider who haunts the Mississaugas Trail on Scugog Island near Port Perry, Ontario, was killed in 1958, or possibly 1968. He was going too quick to stop when the road came to a dead end and was thrown from his machine. In this instance, a wire fence was responsible for removing his head. If you venture onto that road at night, you might see the phantom lights of the bike approaching you, or the red tail light going away from you, and feel your car shake when the ghost races past you. In 2018, a resident who had lived on the road since 1955 said that the accident never happened, and despite the story being well known locally, there was no ghost, headless or otherwise. But like the Headless Horseman, mere disbelief is not going to stop stories of the Headless Motorcyclist racing down lonely roads in the quiet dark hours from out of the dark shadows of history.